This is an image of Kuan Yin. She's the regarder of the cries of the world, the Buddhist symbol for infinite compassion. In this particular statue, she's carrying a sutra or a Buddhist scripture, the Prajna Sutra, one of the Prajna Sutras, of which there are many, wisdom sutras of Mahayana Buddhism, the greater vehicle. The vehicle that's so great that it has the capacity to ferry all beings, all sentient beings, from this shore of suffering across the sea to the other shore of enlightenment, perfect enlightenment, or Buddhahood. She is one of several what I think of as cosmic bodhisattvas. A bodhisattva is a being who makes vows essentially to save all beings or help all beings gain relief from their suffering. And these bodhisattvas vow that they will postpone their own attainment of nirvana or enlightenment or Buddhahood until they can accomplish the task associated with their vow. In Kuan Yin's case, she made a vow that if people just think of her in any dreadful circumstances that they might be encountering, that she will be there to give assistance to them. Her name was originally Avalokitesvara in Sanskrit, which basically means the same thing, regarder of the cries of the world. In the Lotus Sutra, which is one of the most wonderful of the Mahayana scriptures or sutras, there's a chapter devoted to Avalokitesvara. And there's a description in that chapter of how this cosmic bodhisattva manifests himself, herself, in any one of a myriad ways to meet the needs of a suffering being. Different ones of us, when we're suffering, we may have a need for a helper to be in the form of a man or a woman or a teacher or a neighbor. Whatever our particular need is, keeping in mind that the purpose of the Buddha is really to teach us and to help us, that this bodhisattva, Kuan Yin, which, by the way, evolved from a male figure to a female figure, essentially, I think, in China. And so Kuan Yin is the Chinese name for this bodhisattva. That she can manifest herself in many, 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 many ways. In fact, some statues of Kuan Yin show her with, I think it's like 1,000 arms, each of the arms having a hand with different implements that can help human beings, so that she can help essentially multiple human beings simultaneously. This is one of my favorite statues of Kuan Yin. It's a beautiful statue that I think is probably of Chinese origin. And again, I love the fact that she's carrying the Wisdom Sutra, because these are the two attributes of the cosmic Buddha. There are cosmic Buddhas and cosmic Bodhisattvas. And the two attributes of the cosmic Buddhas are wisdom and compassion. And these two things are related. I noted that in this particular statue of Kuan Yin, she's holding a Buddhist scripture, the Prajna scripture. I mentioned at that time that there are actually several Prajna sutras. This one, for example, is called the Large Sutra on Perfect Wisdom. These several scriptures were formulated around 100 to 300 AD. And in many ways, to my mind, they represent the most profound expressions of truth or reality that human beings have ever composed or generated. A key underlying message, or in many cases overt message, of the Prajna or the Wisdom Sutras is that the nature of reality cannot be expressed in any words or concepts. This leaves us with a bit of a dilemma, because our nature as human beings is such that we think and we speak in concepts. And to be able to think and to be able to speak and use language is a fantastic development in the course of the evolution of creatures on this earth, because obviously it gives us tremendous problem-solving capabilities. And it also serves as a basis for us to create inventions that make life easier for us. But the nature of thinking is, some people would call it dualistic. By definition, thinking breaks things down into this versus that. And to the extent that we can speak about such things in words, we would say that the nature of reality, with capital R, is non-dual. It cannot be broken down. It cannot be conceptualized. It cannot be described with language. And there's a word within these Prajna sutras called sunyata. And sunyata is translated different ways. The void, or emptiness, or space. The way I think about sunyata is that it does mean emptiness, but in the sense that everything, every discrete thing or being or person or entity that we can conceive of is empty of its own independent existence. The implication is a kind of interconnectedness. But this is very important, because it's not just that the bodhisattva is a good person, a good altruistic being. The bodhisattva has experienced prajna, or wisdom, the essence of which is sunyata, or emptiness. And when prajna is experienced in the kind of way that I've described, that is, if the nature of reality is such that there is this interconnectedness between ourselves and other beings, for example, well, how then can we really, in a reasonable way, seek enlightenment, for example, for our own self only? In other words, by definition, what evolves from the wisdom is compassion. We would say that the two main attributes are wisdom and compassion. Wisdom as a result of experientially knowing that everything is empty of its own independent self-existence or identity, which then leads to compassion for all beings and a desire to help beings or save beings from their various forms of suffering, which again gets back then to the bodhisattva vow, which is to do just that. When we see a statue like this with the Prajnaparamita Sutra, that's very profound symbolism that relates to this experience that can be part of our experience as a human being, primarily through meditational kinds of practices. I have spoken in previous videos of the sublime altruism, the profound wisdom, and the amazing compassion of the bodhisattva within Mahayana Buddhism. I've spoken of Quan Yin as one of the great cosmic bodhisattvas who embodies or symbolizes infinite compassion, the desire on the part of the cosmic Buddha to provide relief from suffering for us beings in this saha world, this world of suffering. The statue is sort of a generic Japanese example of an image of a bodhisattva, one who has taken that vow to help beings in their various states of difficulty in this life. There was once a time when I had a religious conversion experience. This was in 1979. It was outside the context of any particular religious belief system. But as I looked within and read and studied, it was Mahayana Buddhism that was the framework that made the most sense to me. And in particular, I greatly admired, as I still do, the notion of a being, of a bodhisattva, a Buddha to be, who forgoes or delays his or her attainment of perfect enlightenment so as to remain in this world to assist beings. I actually thought, hey, maybe I could use that as a role model and become a bodhisattva of sorts. I did various things to try to follow the bodhisattva path. And without getting into detail on exactly what those activities were, leave it to say that I failed miserably. I couldn't do it. And in spite of that failure, or maybe because of that failure, I discovered that there is a path within Buddhism that doesn't require me to attain that kind of perfect character. And as many of you will know, that of course is the Pure Land path, the Pure Land form of Buddhism, which was promulgated on the basis of the Sukhavati Sutras, or the Pure Land Sutras, of which there are 3. And it's within the larger sutra that a vow is made by a bodhisattva called Dharmakaya Bodhisattva, that in his particular case he indicated he would forego the attainment of Buddhahood unless through his good works and the merit transference generated by those works that he could create a pure land of bliss in the western part of the universe where all anybody would have to do is think of him or say his name, and they could be reborn in his pure land upon their death. This actually is the form of Buddhism that's been followed by more tens of millions of people in the course of history than any other form of Buddhism, but we don't hear about it that much in the West. In any case, this Pure Land form of Buddhism was refined to its ultimate degree by Shinran in Japan around the 13th century. That form of Buddhism is now called Shin Buddhism or Jodo Shinshu, which means true Pure Land Buddhism. In any case, Dharmakaya Bodhisattva, according to this scripture, this sutra, became the Buddha called Amida Buddha. So by simply saying the name of Amida Buddha in the form of what we call the Nembutsu means the name Namo Amida Butsu, which means I take refuge in Amida Buddha. By simply saying Namo Amida Butsu, or even thinking it. In other words, by orienting ourselves in a way toward cosmic Buddhahood in a way that recognizes our own inadequacy and our own faith that in spite of our inadequacy there is an other power in the universe, if you will, which is concerned with us and cares about us and wants us to be free of our suffering, to be liberated. That by simply orienting ourselves in that way, we can get assurance in this life that we will be reborn in a land that is free of the limitations that we have in this life that keep us from attaining Buddhahood, that keep us from being able to accomplish the bodhisattva path. Limitations of this body, limitations of these circumstances, that by orienting ourselves in that way and having that faith, that we can have the assurance in this life that, we are accepted just as we are, and we will be reborn in Amita's pure land of bliss. And that is my conviction. That is my deep conviction and my deep source of comfort. Now, do I believe this in a concrete way in terms of the idea that, there in a specific place in the universe concretely is a godlike figure? No. But I believe that conceptual system, that way of thinking, most closely describes a dynamic or a process that is real. Keeping in mind that no conceptual system, no worldview, no way of thinking about reality is adequate to describe reality with a capital R. But given that we have to have some way of thinking, and given that we are suffering in this world, and we are inadequate to become perfect, and we do reflect on and are concerned about what happens when we die, that I think it is true that there is a force in the universe that accepts me just as I am, and that there is a profound ideal that can be attained when I die, at which point I can come back and more freely and more capably help those in need in various ways that are inconceivable to me in this life. Namo Mita Boots. May I be free from enmity and danger. May I be free from mental suffering. May I be free from physical suffering. May I be happy. May my relatives and friends and fellow meditators be free from enmity and danger, be free from mental suffering, be free from physical suffering. May they be happy. In the entire universe, whatever beings that move on earth, on water, or in air, may they be free from enmity and danger, be free from mental suffering, be free from physical suffering. May they be happy. Namo Mita Butsu. Namo Mita Butsu. Namo Mita Butsu.